Oh, here he is.
Oh,
I will call this meeting to order. First thing first, if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Cookie, if we could have the roll call, please.
Commissioner Narita,
Here.
Commissioner Redelmeyer.
Here.
Chair Robbins,
Here.
Vice Chair Rowinski.
here.
And Commissioner Michaels.
Here.
Great, thank you. And again, I apologize for coming in late. For those in the audience who wish to speak, there are yellow slips to fill out. For those who are on Zoom, if there are any, you can at the appropriate time raise your hand, and there's the raise your hand icon, and you can be called upon. Those who are in on the telephone, know that it's *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute when things are time. First order of business is the consent calendar. These are the minutes of the March 8 meeting. Any comments, questions, or corrections? Hearing none, could I hear a motion to approve the minutes, please?
I move to approve the March minutes.
And a second? Great, thank you very much. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Done. Minutes are approved. Now it's public comment time. This is for comments from the public on items that are not on the agenda. Do we have any speaker slips?
No, let me check. Zoom. No. I see
Anybody?
no hands raised.
No hands raised either. Okay. Going once, going twice. Hearing none, we'll close public comment and go on to new business, which is we're to receive a progress report. This is the annual report on the climate action plan. And I think there's some technical changes we may have to be informed about. Staff, please.
Great. Okay. Good evening, Chair Robbins and Commissioners. My name is Andrea Chow, and I am the Sustainability Analyst with the City of San Mateo. I'm here tonight to present a progress report on implementation of our Climate Action Plan. The Climate Action Plan was adopted in 2020 and includes strategies and measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions with reduction targets for 2030 and 2050 as shown on the slide. Implementation measures are organized into 9 categories. This plan is intended for multi-year implementation to work towards the 2030 goal. And to track CAP implementation, staff provides annual updates to the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission and City Council on the status of the implementation of each of these key metrics. So my presentation this evening will highlight the progress we've made in each of the Climate Action Plan categories. But first, I'm going to provide an overview of the Climate Action Plan technical update. So the Climate Action Plan aligns with the current general plan, but the city has been making progress towards the 2040 general plan update. And the 2040 general plan will reflect new state laws and California Air Resources Board and Bay Area Air Quality Management District guidance. Once the 2040 general plan is adopted, the climate action plan would no longer align. So it is necessary to complete a partial and focused update of the climate action plan. This technical update will focus on updating quantitative data points, revising the 2030 reduction target, and establishing a new 2045 reduction target, which currently does not exist in the CAP. This work will also include forecasting the greenhouse gas emission reductions associated with each CAP measure, as well as accounting for regional and state actions that are planned. The scope of work will not provide a comprehensive review and update of additional greenhouse gas measures, since staff are currently actively working on implementation of these measures, and modification to them isn't necessary to maintain general plan consistency. But this analysis will allow us to evaluate whether the city is on track to meet those new targets with the current CAP measures. So in February of this year, the City Council approved an amendment to the city's agreement with PlaceWorks to perform this technical update of the climate action plan. And so this is a 6-month project that is currently underway. As part of the technical update, PlaceWorks completed a 2019 greenhouse gas emissions inventory. This quantitative analysis is typically done every 5 years, as it is a time-intensive process to gather the data, adjust the data based on current climate action planning guidance and methodologies, and then also to implement the appropriate data quality assurances. So the city had to opt for a 2019 greenhouse gas emissions inventory as opposed to a 2020 GHG inventory, so that the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the shelter-in-place orders would not skew the data. For similar reasons, 2021 was not selected, and then data from 2022 would not yet be available for this analysis right now. There are a few adjustments made to the 2005 baseline and the annual inventories that were included in the adopted CAP. So this table looks a little bit different than what's in the adopted climate action plan. And I'm going to go through what data points changed and why. So for on-road transportation, the data differs only slightly to match the VMT to align with the General Plan 2040. The inventories also now include the transmission and distribution losses for electricity and natural gas use in the built environment. So that resulted in some slight changes to the emissions associated with both commercial and residential built environment emissions. Perhaps the biggest change is around off-road emissions. PlaceWorks revised this based on the new MFAC model from the California Air Resources Board. And so this newer model has much more accurate data that's more reflective of the San Mateo community. And so it's more accurate based on the types of off-road equipment that's present in the region, how often they're used, and the fuel efficiency. And then finally, point sources are removed from the inventory and instead provided at the below the table as informational because of BACMD guidance to remove things that are outside of the local jurisdiction's control. But the rest of the numbers are the same as what is adopted in the climate action plan. Oh, and then the 2019 column is completely new. I want to review some of the changes we saw from the 2005 baseline to now, or to our 2019 inventory. The largest reduction occurred in the commercial and industrial built environment, where we saw a significant emissions reduction, 50%. There was also a significant reduction of 30% in the residential built environment sector. Emissions from the built environment have decreased since there is a much higher proportion of clean energy being provided by Peninsula Clean Energy. And PCE was introduced in 2017 and now provides a significant portion of San Mateo's power. And then in addition to that, PG&E has also increased the portion of clean energy sources in recent years. We saw a decline in waste emissions, likely due to the closure of the Third Avenue landfill in the year 2000. And for on-road transportation, even though we have seen VMT increase year over year, we still saw a slight decrease. And that is likely due to a higher proportion of low and zero emission vehicles. And emissions from water and wastewater sector decreased 34% below 2005 levels, which is likely due to efficiency upgrades at the San Mateo Water Control Plant. And then this graph shows how the city has made progress toward the reduction targets. The 2019 inventory shows that the city has reduced emissions 22% below the 2005 baseline and is exceeding the 2020 goal, which was 15% below the 2005 baseline. And that's indicated in the dashed line in orange. So this is an exciting achievement that shows that there's been a lot of progress since that first climate action plan was adopted in 2015. But there's still a lot of work to be done to meet the 2030 goal, which is the green line on the graph. And PlaceWorks is now working on preparing forecasts for the greenhouse gas reduction benefits of those local and planned action and of our greenhouse gas emission reduction measures through 2045. And an update on this effort will be provided at a future Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission meeting. And in the following slides, I'll talk about key metrics and highlights from the climate action plan implementation over the past year. Starting with building electrification, which refers to the transition of buildings to use electric equipment for space and water heating, clothes drying, and cooking. An all-electric building does not use natural gas. And building electrification is an important strategy to reduce greenhouse gases because natural gas is a fossil fuel. Whereas I described before in an earlier slide, electricity is becoming cleaner and cleaner each year. The city's building electrification requirements for new construction have increased over the past years, starting in 2019 when the city adopted its first building electrification REACH code that offered 2 pathways to encourage electrification, and that went into effect January 1, 2020. But then in 2020, the city adopted a new REACH code that required all residential buildings and all office buildings be all electric. That went into effect January 1, 2021. And then as part of the 3-year building code cycle, the city council adopted a new requirement for all buildings to be all electric. That went into effect January 1, 2023. So this strong trend of increasing our all electric requirements over time will result in more all-electric buildings. And this slide shows the building permits that have been issued by the city for new all-electric units. In addition to adopting REACH codes for new construction, in 2022, the City Council adopted REACH codes impacting residential building upgrades to encourage electric readiness and require electric equipment. So the city of San Mateo is now one of a handful of cities with electrification requirements for existing residential buildings. And in recent news, on March 15th of this year, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District adopted rules to prohibit the sale and installation of gas water heaters by 2027 and gas furnaces by 2029. Electric panel upgrades are often identified as a barrier for replacing gas equipment with electric. And so the city's REACH code that requires breaker space and panel capacity during panel upgrades and panel replacements will really help homeowners prepare for future electric equipment requirements. There are a variety of rebates available for electric equipment to San Mateo community members. And in 2022, PCE launched their heat pump HVAC rebate. We're hoping to see more uptake in these rebates over time. And we're hosting a home electrification workshop for homeowners on May 9th at the library, hoping to highlight these incentives and the resources available. And the city launched an induction cooktop loaner program where residents can get hands-on experience with an induction cooktop. And in 2022, there were 15 residents who borrowed the kits, and the program remains very popular. At the close of 2022, San Mateo had a 97.5% participation rate. Again, on the previous slide, it showed how energy use in the built environment is responsible for a significant amount of our emissions that were reduced. And PCE's electricity resulted in a 55,922 metric tons of carbon equivalent avoided. I've also included an equivalent conversion here to demonstrate what that might mean. This avoids 12,444 gas-powered passenger vehicles driving for 1 year. There were also 384 permits for solar and over 3,000 kilowatts installed on residential buildings. And we saw an increase in the number of battery storage being installed compared to previous years. And finally, 5 permits issued for solar on non-residential buildings. The Home Energy Score program provides a score of home energy use on a scale of 1 to 10. It estimates home energy use, associated costs, and provides energy solutions to cost effectively improve home energy efficiency. And in 2022, there were 26 home energy score rebates in San Mateo. The Bay Area Regional Energy Network provides rebates to encourage energy efficiency upgrades. And through the Home Upgrade Program, the Home Plus program, residents can receive rebates for different energy efficiency measures like insulation, air sealing, duct sealing, and heat pump equipment. And in 2022, 44 homes participated in the Home Plus program, and rebates were issued for 101 individual measures. And then the Home Energy Advisor program is a resource to residents interested in making an energy upgrade through BayREN. Advisors offer free and unbiased advice to walk you through the BayREN rebates, and they also provide referrals to other programs. And in 2022, there were 60 individuals in San Mateo that worked with the Home Energy Advisors. For municipal energy efficiency, the Sustainable Solutions Turnkey Project, which was in partnership with PG&E to make lighting and HVAC upgrades at all city facilities, is responsible for a lot of the energy savings we're seeing throughout city facilities. This project was completed in Q1 of 2020. And this graph shows the actual savings we're seeing month to month since that project has been in place. Actual savings for the year 2022 exceeded energy savings targets for both electricity and gas. And the city continues to make efficiency improvements at City Hall, at recreation centers, and also at parking garages that will result in energy savings. There are now 31 electric vehicle charging ports available to the public at different city-owned sites. And then in addition to cities charging sites, there are 136 electric vehicle charging ports available throughout the community to the public. Zero emission vehicles accounted for 33% of the sale of light duty vehicles in San Mateo County to the public at different city-owned sites. And then
Andrea, I might suggest, I think on Zoom, you're not muted, so that might help. If you can mute the Zoom function there.
the audio is not on.
Okay, maybe Cookie from your seat, if you can, as the Zoom host, if you can mute her. I think it's causing the feedback.
Okay.
She would be the presenter.
Yeah, it's not connected to audio.
Huh.
It's not, it's showing that she's not connected.
Interesting. Never mind.
Not hearing the tech difficulty anymore. I'll continue and see. We'll continue to move forward. I think I was in the middle of talking about zero emission vehicles and the increase of their sales. They accounted for 33% of the sales of light duty vehicles in San Mateo County, which is a large increase over the previous year. And for the city's fleet, the city began working with PCE's public EV fleets program in December of last year. And this program provides free technical assistance, project planning, funding to public agencies for new EVs and charging infrastructure for fleets. The city was awarded grant funding to develop a citywide transportation demand management ordinance, and city staff kicked off the project and anticipate an engagement with stakeholders starting in spring of 2023, with final adoption anticipated for spring of 2024. Transit-oriented development projects that are currently under construction are everything on this slide. But this list includes development projects that are within the downtown area and within the rail corridor transit-oriented development plan, which provides guidance for development within a half-mile of the Hillsdale and Hayward Park Caltrain stations. The city also received grant funding for the development of a citywide complete streets plan, and the outcome will be an actionable plan with a list of prioritized multimodal infrastructure projects that strive for a safe, reliable, and accessible travel options for all modes. The city procured a consultant for this work and is developing the plan and also anticipating community engagement to kick off in spring 2023. I also wanted to highlight the amount of bike facilities that have been installed in San Mateo. There are roughly 62.4 miles of bike facilities available in San Mateo, with 3.63 miles of those bike facilities being constructed just this past year. This table shows the amount of compost that is diverted each year, and the right column shows the total amount of waste that is being diverted from the landfill, and that includes recycling. So we're seeing kind of a modest increase year after year in increasing our diversion rate. The city's disposable food serviceware ordinance is modeled after the county ordinance and will require food facilities, well, not will, and already requires food facilities and restaurants to use compostable fiber-based disposables. This ordinance went into effect, was adopted by the city council a couple years ago, but the enforcement date is October 1, 2022. And then the city is partnering with Okapi Reusables, thanks to the leadership and funding of the County of San Mateo Office of Sustainability. Okapi Reusables is a simple borrow and return cup service featuring different kinds of glasses, stainless steel cups for hot drinks and glass tumblers for iced drinks. And there's currently 4 different cafes participating in this program, including 3B's Coffee, Urban Ritual, Meat Fresh, and Here Tea. But the city of San Mateo is the first to join the Okapi Reusables network, and this program just launched in December of last year. And there are a variety of rebates available to encourage water efficiency and conservation. The city partners with Bosca to issue rain barrel rebates, and we saw a record number of rain barrel rebates distributed last year, 82. And in December 2022, the city partnered with the Flows to Bay program to distribute rain barrels at a discounted rate, where you could also take advantage of the rebate at the city courtyard. Cal Water distributes rebates for high efficiency equipment, including toilets and washer machines, and their lawn to garden program, their turf replacement program, along with their spray to drip rebate is very popular. Residents and businesses can transform lawn and grass areas into water-wise gardens and landscapes, and Cal Water will rebate $3 for every square foot of living lawn that is transformed. And you can add an additional 50 cents per square foot for converting your traditional spray nozzles to drip irrigation. And Cal Water shared some great data on rebates and saw an increase in water savings due to conservation programs this past year. And then in July of 2021, staff launched the city's electric leaf blower rebate program. The rebate was structured to offer landscaping business 75% of the purchase price and up to $500, and residents can receive 50% of the purchase price up to $100. And the city has issued 8 rebates to commercial businesses and 31 rebates to residents. And staff did present to City Council on the different leaf blower policy options this past month, and the City Council directed staff to promote electric leaf blower rebate programs and did not recommend staff move forward with any of the policy options at this time. And then I also wanted to remind the commission that in October 2021, California became the first state with a statewide ban on new gas leaf blowers and new gas lawnmowers because of Assembly Bill 1346. So that prohibits the sale of this new gas equipment starting in the year 2024. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll bring it to the commission for questions, and then we'll go to the public. Why don't we start with Commissioner Narita?
Great, thanks. Thanks, Andrea, as always, for a wonderful presentation and report. Really appreciate it. So just a couple the background questions, and then I have a couple more specific ones. For CARB, they have a 2045 climate goal now, right? Is that like a net zero goal? Like, because you mentioned that the California 2030 goal is 40% below 2005 baseline. What is the 2045 goal?
I'm embarrassed to say that I do not know the 2045 goal.
Okay, well, do you remember what the 2015 was? It like net zero or like kind of, something like that?
Close, yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay. And then I was curious on the GHGs with a point source. Like, could you give an example of what a point source means? Like, is it a cogen plant or is it like a company's data center? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, so I asked our consultant for more information about point sources. So point sources are stationary sources, but they're generally in our community institutional. And so the examples, I think, will help you understand what those are in San Mateo, which are San Mateo Medical Center, College of San Mateo, Mills, and San Mateo County Youth Services Center. Those are the largest.
Like hospitals that run 24/7, basically. Like stuff like that. Okay.
They are, yeah, these ones are. Well, the College of San Mateo is not
Yeah.
a medical facility, but institution.
Okay. Thank you. And then still staying on the GHGs, but now looking to the future. I was curious for the PlaceWorks forecasting assessments. How will those take place? Like, could you walk us through a little bit of what you anticipate that looking like for the new, 2045 and maybe 2030, but maybe only 2045
Yeah.
Deadlines?
Yeah, so for the CAP technical update, PlaceWorks will be forecasting greenhouse gas emissions associated with our community through 2030 and through 2045. So that'll give us an understanding of business as usual without the climate action plan. And then in addition to that, they're forecasting the emissions reductions associated with planned local, state, and regional activities. And this is a process that is similar to what was taken on when the CAP was initially developed. It's focused on the quantitative analysis. So it's looking really at the numbers and adjusting from there. So we'll take the assumptions around, for example, gas water heaters and make some adjustments based on the participation rates and what would be assumed would happen because of regulations from, let's say, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District ruling or even the city's REACH codes.
Got it. And so does it take into consideration, so the business as usual would take into consideration anticipated laws, but stuff, for instance, that is pretty live, like building electrification of existing buildings, that's a live topic right now that is subject to a lot of conversation and stakeholder engagement. Where would something like that fall?
Yeah, so that will be accounted for as well through this process.
But in the business as usual, or that would,
No.
or in the projections? And would you get multiple projections? Like, here's an ambitious projection, here's a medium ambition production, and here's, you know what I mean? Like, how would that start to look? Because that can influence how, you know, and inform how the council makes decisions.
So there will be some assumptions generated for each of the participation of each greenhouse gas emission reduction measure. So with that, I think there's research and data that places will rely on to generate these assumptions. But then there's also looking forward and thinking about the policies that could influence that decision. That will color that data as well.
Got it. And along those lines, I really appreciated the pie chart in your presentation of the different GHG emissions. I thought that was great. Thank you. So like 53 or 52, I didn't write it down, % is coming from transportation. So, you know, I'm so proud of us for making these great strides in buildings, and we're going to make even better strides in the future in that space. And yet it's unlikely that we would achieve a 2030 and certainly not a 2045 goal without really tackling that other 52, 53%. And so in your, you know, expertise, like what are some of the things that you think we start to need to think about in a new business as usual as we move forward to start to really get to that half of the pie?
Yeah, on-road transportation remains a big challenge for our community in many communities, right? I think this commission has the pleasure of having Sue Ellen Atkinson here a lot to talk about our work on our complete streets plan and improving bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure that will really strengthen and encourage people to reduce vehicle trips. I had the slide of highlighting the different development projects that are occurring in transit-oriented areas. That's hugely important in influencing whether people make a vehicle trip. And I think seeing that slight change in vehicle emissions or on-road transportation emissions, despite VMT still climbing in our community, and that being attributed likely to the increase of low or zero emission vehicles is really important. And so we know electric vehicles can help reduce our emissions. So I think increasing access to electric vehicles is really important. We know that the availability of at-home electric vehicle charging is often a barrier for someone wanting to purchase or lease an electric vehicle. And so I think there are some policies or programs that we can help to encourage multifamily property owners, for instance, or property owners that are renting their home to increase that access.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. A couple last things. So the disposable food serviceware ordinance, I'm curious, you know, for the purposes of the public's awareness, what do we do if we experience a non-compliance, like in our DoorDash or in Flume when we pick up takeout? Like, do you have advice for the public on that?
Yeah, the disposable food serviceware ordinance has a website. Don't know it off the top of my head, but the website also has a complaint form where if you'd like, you can provide the name of the restaurant and the complaint or the violation. There's also resources on this website if you're interested in being more of a champion about the disposable foodware ordinance to educate the restaurant yourself or share information with friends about, you know, the things you can do as a consumer to educate people about the requirements.
Great. And then for Kiku Crossing, that's so exciting that this is like a massive, you know, affordable housing and all electric multifamily complex. And that I didn't know that, but we apparently won like one awards. Well, we're an example to other, like a case study to like in schools and universities, like this site, according to Instagram. And so it's just incredibly exciting. And at the same time, you know, we have to face the realities of climate resilience and power outages that we can experience. And so that may even become more frequent as the climate continues to be disrupted. So I was just curious if the city or if the developers of Kiku Crossing or some combination has thought about any resilience measures for the project in light of the more frequent power outages that we are experiencing, and understanding that some of them only last a few hours, but some of them last over 24 hours, which is incredibly disruptive, especially for folks who are very reliant on power for health or other reasons. So just curious if you know of any resources in that space.
Well, I'm proud to say that the site did maximize the solar potential, so that there is solar associated with the building and with the parking structure, but that work is underway and battery storage was not considered for the project. Battery storage is still very, very costly, and this is an affordable housing project, which makes it very, very challenging. But I know there's been a lot of concerns about electrification and grid resilience. I think we have leaders in our community and amongst Peninsula Clean Energy and PG&E that are aware of the challenges associated with grid resilience on the peninsula and that are working towards that.
Great. So there is not like the solar will help in the daytime, but at night there is still that vulnerability potentially. And that's
There's no battery
an unknown
storage.
and vulnerability. Okay. And then my last question is something that you didn't present on this, but it was in the documents, and I do love to bring this up, and I think the public should know, even though I asked you about this on email beforehand. But on the resilience studies that PCE is doing with the city, there was a site, which was the police station, that was identified in 2001, like 2 years ago. It showed up in the CAP update 2 years ago, which was very exciting. And unfortunately, since then, has not made any progress now due to a faulty roof issue. And so could you share with the public what you shared with me on the update for a potential new site for this resilience opportunity?
Yeah, so Peninsula Clean Energy is still open to entertaining additional sites, additional city facilities throughout the county to participate in their solar and resilience program. So we did a site assessment at several other sites. So we'll hopefully know by the end of the year if we'll be able to move forward.
Okay, great. So the timeline is that the site identification would be by the end of 2023? Okay.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you. That's it.
Commissioner Riddlemeyer?
Hi, thank you, Andrea, for this progress report. I do have quite a few questions. Going in the order of your presentation, do we know what, you mentioned that the new all-electric buildings, that you gave the number of those from the last couple of years. What percentage of those are our total inventory of buildings in the city? I'm just curious.
I'm afraid without checking the data to really cite a number for you, but I'd be happy to follow up on that.
Okay.
But I will say, we know that new development is just a fraction of the total number of homes in San Mateo.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm just trying to figure out the progress that we're making on these numbers. And you mentioned that, maybe I got this wrong, but when you were talking about the energy efficiency, you said that there's 60 leads. Are those from Bayron, right?
Yes.
And they go to people's houses and tell them how to make it more efficient?
I believe the interaction is mostly by the phone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what the result is of those. Do we know the results of any of those consultation?
I do not know the results, but I think they vary they can go through the program or they can be referred to other programs.
Okay. And of the, there are huge numbers in reduced greenhouse gases from residential and commercial buildings that you talked about, 30% and 50%. But how much of that came from switching to clean energy from PCE? And how much was from behavioral change, either conservation or more efficient, steps that the owners had taken? So I'm wondering what the breakdown is of just switching the PCE switch to clean energy versus behavioral change. It'd be really interesting to see how that breaks down?
Sure. I don't know the answer to that question either. I know that switching to Peninsula Clean Energy greatly helped reducing our emissions. But yeah, I think what you'd be asking for then is just kind of looking at electricity usage comparison. Yeah, so that's
Right.
something that we have data for that we could look at. And I
Yeah.
could follow up with you, but I. also
Yeah, because I
don't
think
know
that's
offhand.
really, I mean, that 30 and 50% is awesome. But it seems like that's kind of where the clean energy is taking us. And now we need to get those numbers down even more. And that's going to take behavioral change. So it'd be interesting to see how we can, get people to do that.
And I think we'll see electricity also increase too as we push towards more electric appliances and see gas go down as well.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm interested to see how energy efficiency is playing a role in this and
Mhm.
how it can play more of a role if we can get people to get more efficient appliances or conserve their energy more often. Similarly, talking about composting and the diversion rates there, when I was looking through your slides earlier, I remember one of the places where we've had the least amount of progress is in the multifamily or multi-unit residences, correct? And I think I read that it was like only 30% of units that are five or more units are composting. Why aren't those other 70% composting? And spoiler alert, I live in one of those 70% that is not. So I know why my complex is not. So I'm just wondering why those other 70% are not composting and what we can do to get them on board.
Yeah, I know multifamily composting is always a popular topic and a challenging space. My understanding is that space constraints are often one of the challenges in siting composting, dumpsters, I suppose. And then secondly, I know there was challenges with contamination. So that's like an education component to make sure there's proper sorting. But I was hoping for so the data that's provided in the report is from 2021, just kind of showing the number of multifamily buildings participation in composting. But there is attention to this topic. And I wish I had the data to show that maybe there was some progress from the prior years. But I hope that provides some context to why it's challenging.
Right. I can imagine that there's probably many different reasons. And yeah, I mean, I've talked to my HOA and I know why they refused to get a compost and it was none of those. So there are many reasons, but it all does come down to education. And I would love to know how we can help educate those complexes so that they can start composting. I would love it. I used to take my compost up to the farmer's market at San Mateo College, but they lost their grant. So now they're no longer there, fresh approach. So now I have, I'm just throwing my compost right into the landfill bin, which really hurts.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there's been any analysis of when it comes to the off-road equipment, circling back to that, if there was a ban on gas leaf blowers, how much would that help reduce the off-road emissions? I'd love to see the numbers on that sort of analysis.
I can follow up with our consultant to understand more about the details about the MFAC model from CARB to see what the assumptions are, because I think that might lend some, yeah.
Same with idling. If we were to reduce cars idling, and I know that the traffic lights have been improved, the timing of the lights, so that has helped. And I saw that in your presentation a bit. But are there other places where we could reduce idling? And if so, then how would that help reduce emissions? Like in some cities, I know that they have idling bans at schools. If we had that citywide, where, that's one of the places where you have idling cars the most in our city and other cities, when parents or the caregivers are waiting for the kids to come out of school. And it's one of the worst places to have idling cars because you're around this vulnerable community of children. So I'm really curious if we could have an analysis to see how much that would help reduce our greenhouse gases from cars. Also, I'm almost done. I just read a new study that came out from, I think it's the University of Maryland, the Bureau of Transportation Statistics did a nationwide study and found that 52% of daily trips within the US are for trips 3 miles or less. And I don't know if that the exact number is going to apply for San Mateo, but that's pretty shocking. And if we know how the daily trips are breaking down in San Mateo, that might really be a big incentive for pushing things like e-bikes or e-scooters. If you're only going 1 to 3 miles, if you're going to the pharmacy or the coffee shop or something like that, it'd be really, I'd really like to know what are our daily trips in San Mateo. And I think that's about all the questions I have for now. I'll pass it on.
Thank you, Commissioner Rowinski.
Andrea, could you put up the table that shows the percent change from 2005 to 2019? So everybody could see that. All right.
I still need to share my screen. 1 second.
Yep. Okay. Great, thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna, I know I want to just talk briefly about point sources here, and I know I realize it's out of the jurisdiction of the city. But I heard in response to a question from Commissioner Rita that these point sources are mostly, I heard the College of San Mateo, Chope Hospital, Mills Hospital. And I think there was a fourth, Chope, Mills College, and
Did you say the medical center?
yeah, Chope Medical Center, yeah.
Oh, the San Mateo County Youth Services Center.
Oh,
Was the
okay.
fourth.
And here's why I'm asking that question. I am curious, who is the entity that oversees their greenhouse gas reductions?
Yeah.
And it may not be one, because you're dealing with hospitals and a juvenile facility and a college.
Yeah, so for the 2 county facilities, the San Mateo County would
Ye-
be responsible. And then for the College of San Mateo, I believe that would be the state as part of like the state college system.
Okay. So that's some entity in the state and on the college, the college and Chope Medical Center would be the county.
Oh, and then I should say BACMID is also responsible for regulating these facilities.
I'm sorry, what was that?
The Bay Area Air Quality Management
Oh,
District.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
So I realize they're outside of the city's jurisdiction, but I think it's important to understand these are actually very large employers in our city, the largest employers. And I think it's important to understand they are also held accountable to greenhouse gas reductions, hopefully. And as thoughtfully and as deliberately as we do in our city, I hope. Okay, that answers my question there. And then I had a quick question on, I just got a couple of more questions here. Measure ST6. Now, Measure ST6 is transportation demand management. And in there, the city received a grant to develop a citywide transportation demand management ordinance. And my question is, can you explain to the public what transportation demand management is? I mean, my understanding, it's there to reduce vehicle miles traveled, going back to your point. But maybe explain, I'd like the public to understand as well as us, me too, what is the benefit of this ordinance? What could it look like? What is transportation demand management? What is vehicle miles traveled?
Yeah, so the goal of a transportation demand management ordinance is to have some requirements on development that reduce vehicle trips. That's exactly it. And you can do this by the development providing like commuter subsidies for transit, ensuring there's like adequate bike parking. I believe like providing a screen with the like the next bus time or Caltrain time. Those are all examples.
Sure. Is it really taking, because currently we do a transportation demand management review yearly on several developments in the
Yes, yeah.
city. So now we're looking to expand that out beyond that rail corridor and have it citywide.
So I reached out to our principal transportation planner, Sue Ellen, to get some more background on this specific effort. So you're right, we already have TDM policies in place for development, but the citywide effort, the project will update the municipal ordinance and develop program guidelines to provide detail and guidance for staff and the development community to implement trip reduction goals for projects in San Mateo.
Right. So projects would be, does this include single family homes? I'm thinking not when I'm hearing projects. These are multi, I'll call it apartments that could be going on, that are going to go up and that are going to be built along the El Camino, I think comes to my mind. Right. Okay. And vehicle miles traveled, can you just explain that to people? What is that? Because that's a metric we use a lot. And I just like to have people understand that.
Yeah, it's a metric used to summarize the miles traveled by vehicles in our community.
Okay. Okay. Alrighty, I understand what we're saying there. Okay, vehicle miles traveled. All right, but that is the metric that we study. Let me I want to go and these are my last questions. I want to go to Michelle Hudson's letter just briefly. And let me just pull that up. And in her letter, and you and I had touched base on this before the meeting. And I think it's important that people hear that, the items that Ms. Hudson brings up, the city's already on top of. So could you go through those four very quickly? Is that possible? Just,
Sure.
Yeah, just so everybody can hear.
So the first bullet asks that there is an analysis of actual progress towards the 2030 and 2045 greenhouse gas emission targets. So this work was, now this is me, this work was completed and included in the staff report. So the 2019 greenhouse gas emissions inventory provides a measure of actual progress of what has happened in the community. Again, I think we would have selected 2020 or even 2021 if that had made more sense. So we're unfortunately having to use 2019 as our current year to measure our progress towards the
Right.
2030 and 2045 targets. The letter also requests analysis of the impact of the new BACMID rulings restricting the sale of NOx emitting natural gas water heaters beginning in 2027, NOx emitting furnaces beginning in 2029, and large commercial water heaters in 2031. And also asks for the analysis of the impact of the city's newly adopted REACH codes. And so I think hopefully my presentation and some of the Q&A explained that this work will be completed as part of the CAP technical update. And then the last request is create a roadmap that details how the city will achieve the greenhouse gas emission targets, which includes specific actions and specific dates. And then my response, the city's climate action plan already details strategies and specific actions to take to meet the 2030 and 2050 emission targets. So this technical update will fine tune those and revise them based on current information. And then I also want to mention that the city's decarbonization strategy, which is also underway, will establish a roadmap with dates and details about the city's approach specifically to decarbonizing existing buildings.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. No other questions.
Commissioner Michael.
Thank you for the presentation and all the work that went behind it. My first question is more of a basic, it actually wasn't clear to me why we're doing this CAP technical update. Can you just explain again how that's connected to the 2040 general plan update?
Yeah, sorry, I was going to take a moment to stop sharing my. Okay. So your question was about the real reasoning behind the CAP technical update. So the general plan 2040 will rely on guidance and use different population and growth numbers than what the climate action plan that's already adopted assumed. And currently our climate action plan is really quite linked to the general plan. It was adopted as an appendix and it serves as a qualified GHG reduction strategy to help streamline development that are consistent with a CAP. So it's really critical that our climate action plan stay aligned with the general plan and use those same growth numbers and assumptions. And that way, when the general plan is adopted, then the climate action plan can rely on those same assumptions and be compatible.
What's the timeline for the general plan update to be adopted?
I believe by the beginning of next year.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm
Mhm.
chair of that subcommittee. That's the hope, but there's a lot of complexity tying it to existing law, like Measure M, so Measure L rather. So, yeah.
So
might take
this
a
will
while.
keep both documents aligned. And then the 2045 target is being asked by the state
Correct.
to do, okay, for climate action plans.
Yeah. So
Okay.
while we're doing the technical update, we're gonna just do everything, what's be aligned with everything that's in the current guidance.
Got it. And then that was clear how you laid out for us the business as usual is one projection and then one that includes all the measures. For that 2045 goal, will potentially new measures be introduced in the CAP?
So the scope of work right now is really focusing on adjusting and refining the current measures that are already adopted in the climate action plan. But as we move through this process, we'll be able to evaluate if they can really get us towards the 2045 goal.
And I think I just had two comments. I wanted to, based on just things that other commissioners brought up, because my previous job was at the Air District, I thought it could be helpful that most of those point sources are usually backup generators or boilers. And I believe that Air District's new rule will address the boilers in future years as that gets changed out. And then the diesel generators are a longstanding challenge that the Air District's been trying to figure out how to address.
Thank you so much for offering that
Thought
context.
that would be. And then another comment I wanted to make, that the challenge, I think, in these climate action plans is a lot of the inventory numbers are based off of regional sources. So when we do an amazing transit-oriented development in a community and it's those people are walking or taking transit, unfortunately, because the numbers are these regional numbers from MFAC and so on, it may not capture all these amazing projects. And that's the challenge, that CAPs often don't capture, or inventories often don't capture the day-to-day work. So just wanted to bring that up. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Andrea, what do you have any data on the city's public fleet? There was some mention of it in the materials, but maybe what its existing EV status and maybe what's planned, something the city can actually do.
Yes, I do have some data and it has not changed a lot from year to year. I want to go to my.
That I'm aware of, so that's why I'd like to get on the record thought there.
So I know purchasing of vehicles in general has been really impacted with supply chain issues. And so there's been orders of vehicles that will sit for a year without being processed. So I know the city purchased 9 hybrid patrol units, and those are still being outfitted for police use. So that's upcoming. But what I've reported in under Clean City Fleet is that we currently have 57 vehicles that are alternative fuel vehicles. So that means it includes hybrid vehicles, our CNG vehicles, and then some electric units as well.
Yeah, out of what sort of total fleet
Oh,
number?
225.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Cookie, do we have any public comment? I see somebody. Yeah.
Okay, first we'll take people in the audience.
Yeah.
Kay Funk.
Thank you. My name is Kay Funk. I live in District 5. MIT, but I'm a retired family doctor. And I have some concerns, particularly about methane. And I appreciated the 2023 CAP update. I thought that it was very readable. The metrics were easy to understand. I think that the process for differentiating what you can measure, what you can't measure, and choosing which you're going to try to update yearly rather than every 5 years, I thought that was a rational process. My specific concern is about methane generated at the wastewater treatment plant. And to refresh y'all, the sewage digesters generate methane, which is the same molecule that is natural gas. And it can be compressed into compressed renewable gas, I guess, and used to power vehicles. And there was an attempt to do that, but it didn't work out here because the compressor wasn't functional. And I think there was also, the vehicles couldn't really fuel right off the wastewater treatment plant. So that methane, which is being generated, which is about 1,400 gallons of gas equivalent per day, is not being used for any kind of energy production. And I've discussed this with Ms. Chow and Mr. Fabre, but if anything that I say is inaccurate, it's my fault, not theirs. I think that most of the methane is flared off. Probably some of it is used to heat the digester chambers, but it's not being used optimally. And I think your committee reviewed the public works projects in February. I didn't see that there was any plan to fix that. Mr. Fabre seems to think that it's pretty fixable. And I would hope that you all would take an interest in really getting that done as soon as it'll work with the other rehab work that's being done at the wastewater treatment plant. And I wanted to talk about compost, but I don't have any time left. So thank you.
Doctor, thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I didn't go to MIT either.
Excuse me, Brian Thurston.
Thank you, Council. I just wanted to reinforce, I think I heard this, how important it is going to be to take a hard look at, on a planning basis, on the cumulative effects of the new rules being pushed down from state and regional entities, in particular the forcing out of service of gas heating and for both water and space heating, as well as the conversion of the automobile fleet to electric. I was looking at my own house as I'm preparing to get solar installed on the roof. And that led me to look at my own power consumption and what would be going on in that time of the year, the half of the year when I won't be producing a whole lot of solar power. What would happen if I have to replace my gas, water, and space heating with electric? And I saw that my power consumption would go up by about 2.5 times, of what it currently is. And that's not even including when my old gasoline powered car finally fails and I go to electric as my next car. The sheer magnitude of the increases in the household, in the neighborhood, and in the city and in the region of electric power consumption is gigantic. If you look at, and I encourage everybody to look at the Peninsula Clean Energy website, it's very informative. They have provided clean power mainly by relying on legacy hydroelectric and geothermal built long ago. And they're trying very hard, and they're a good group, and they're making progress towards trying to replace that with new solar projects and so on. But we all know everybody's going to be doing this. It's not just San Mateo. It's going to be all the Bay. It's going to be the entire state. And I honestly don't know where that power is coming from, but that's for bigger groups to worry about. I think here, though, as a city, we need to get a sense of just how much that household, neighborhood, and city power supply problem is going to grow over the next 20 years. These aren't things fixed in a day. These will be things you have to be working on today for 10 to 20 years from now. And I'm very concerned. I'm going to be doing everything I can to upgrade my house, my panel. I don't know about the neighborhood, and I don't know about the city. And batteries don't do it. They cycle you day to day. They don't cycle you from summer when you're producing a lot of power in the sun to the winter when we're all going to be freezing if there's a outage that goes for more than a day. And so I encourage this group to figure out what ways we can utilize this good consultant support to kind of get a handle on the magnitude of this problem. And it is a problem. It's not just, oh, we're going to be at zero, all electrified, no greenhouse gas. It's how do we get there? And I don't see an easy path, and nor does Peninsula Clean Energy. If you look at their forecasts, they're running out of ideas. And at the same time, when the electrical demand is going to be going way, way up, both here and everywhere through the region and the state. So thank you for really working on this. It's big.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Cookie, do we have any Zoom or phone call?
I
folks?
don't see any hands raised. Anybody that's online, if you want to speak, you can raise your hand. I see no hands raised.
Okay. Thank you for those speakers. Now I'll bring it back to the commission for comment. Since I went last on the questions, I'm going to go first on the comments. I only have two. One, I want to pick up on the first speaker because I think that is something we can address pretty quickly if staff would try and find out what the plan is, what the fix is to use that methane. I was part of the process at the commission level when that was all initiated, but I wasn't aware that it hasn't been, it's not effective. It's not working. So we need to do something with that. Do you know what the plan is?
No, I'm unsure of the progress made there, but I can follow up with our Deputy Director of Public Works, Matt. Do you have anything to offer?
I just want to say that I am part of the committee that reviews our capital improvement program projects. And I know there's one in there related to that. So I do know that something is being done, but I couldn't for the life of me give you the details. So we will definitely have Public Works come back, but I do want to assure you that I know that there is a project that exists that is funded that is intending to address that.
That's great. It's doubly great because it's not only the right thing, but it's something that staff, we're not having to go up to council and play around. So appreciate that. Thank you both. And then lastly, I just need to put in my regular plug. I'm a little disappointed that the action at the council on leaf blowers was so vague, amorphous, and the well-intentioned. It's not going to have much impact. And I think we can see it right now that the off-road equipment is pathetic in its reduction. And it'd be nice to crank that up. And I think we could do so, but I'm somewhat of a lone voice in the wind, but it's on the record again. Comments now, Commissioner Michael.
I just wanted to add that I look forward to seeing how the measures will be for the projection will be incorporated for the decarbonization and the REACH codes and SB 1383, all the things that weren't fully evolved when we did the city did its first cap. So it'll be really interesting to see what benefits those will bring in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rowinski.
I just have a couple of comments here. I did see that Cal Water has finally put together a climate action and risk assessment for their facilities, operations, and water supplies. I don't know if it makes sense to have them come back here and present that. They have presented here. It's been not often, but that could be something of importance. So I'll just kind of put that out as a possibility. I also want to go back to Mr. Thurston's point about energy demand and price. That's something that, everybody knows it's there. It's the 1,000-pound elephant in the room, and nobody wants to answer that. I had PCE do an estimate. By the way, my electric to gas would go up 3 times. So that is, my electric bill will cost me 3 times my gas bill. So, and part of that is going to be demand, and I worked with PC on that. And that's also something, I think it's probably out of the wheelhouse of the city here, and I don't know how, I have to share with you, I don't know how to address it, and there's no simple answer.
Thank you, Commissioner Riddlemeyer.
So I brought this up a little bit earlier. I think that we really should, we really need to reduce our emissions. We know this. And electrification is only going to take us so far. We need behavioral change. And so if there's any way that we can understand what's working, what's working that people are doing, and where are the gaps? Where do we need to help people make those changes, make their homes more energy efficient, in addition to electrifying, but also working on the insulation and reducing their consumption, making them more aware. I really love that, Bayren is doing these consultations with folks, and I'd like to see that a lot more widespread, because I think a lot of people are not aware of how much energy they're using until they do try to make that switch and really look at the numbers. Also, I know that the city is not working alone in this, and I know that the staff is most likely coordinating with other or networking with other cities as well. But I think that that's really important to know that this is a global problem. We need to reduce our emissions, and we should not be doing this city by city. We need to work with other cities, with the county, and learn from each other, see what's working in other places and learn from that. And I mean, the IPCC synthesis that came out recently, if we're going to keep climate change manageable, we really need to change our behavior. And I think anything we can do to make people aware of that, instead of just focusing on electrification and these other things, which we need to do. We need to do everything. But it's really, the outreach and educating people, and then whatever staff needs to do that, whether or not it's more staff, more, somebody to do more outreach, somebody to do more analysis. I think we really need to spend a lot more, the city needs to focus on this more than they have been, because it's become aware with the recent storms that we've had. This is the new normal. And these climate changes have been impacting other parts of the world already. And we're finally seeing that now here. And it's the future. And we need to reduce our emissions and do whatever it takes to get those down.
Thank you, Commissioner Narita.
Thanks. I'm sorry, through the chair, I have one question. I realized, may I ask that question, Andrea? Andrea, on solid waste generation between 2017 and 2019, it's actually a 22% increase on emissions in the chart. Do you have any idea of why that is? Solid waste generation. Just between 2017 and 2019. Or would that be a better question for Public Works?
If it's to do with the emissions, I would be happy to ask that of our consultant to better understand. And I do not know why there was a significant increase.
Okay, I would love a response later then. Thank you so much for that. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that earlier. Okay, now on to comments. So thank you as always for a wonderful update. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I think you do excellent work for the city and we're so lucky to have you and your vision and ambition for our climate goals. So thank you so much. I am very anxious about whether or not we will see success in 2030 if you assume a straight line between 2005 and 2030. We will maybe make it like 39 point something percent. I just did a back of the envelope calculation, below 2005 levels. So that assumes continued progress the way we have right now. And then for any goal 15 years later in 2045, we will fall drastically short of any kind of net zero on that 15-year timescale, assuming a business as usual. So I think the technical cap will be absolutely instrumental in figuring out and are really clearly articulating that gap that we're seeing, because we might just eke by assuming business as usual for 2030, but we will fall desperately short in 2045. And I think the main thing that we have to address now that, not only the proper implementation of the new REACH code and also all the work that you're doing on existing buildings, but again, like I mentioned in my questions, the 52 to 53% for transportation is just enormous. And understanding that a lot of that will come from, electrifying, vehicles and other rebates and tax credits that are outside of the cities. But to Commissioner Rillmeyer's point on behavior change, like what are the additional things that the city does have control over and can do on transportation out beyond just the transit-oriented development, walking and biking ped infrastructure pieces, which are absolutely key. But what are the outreach, education, and behavior change models? What are the public-private partnerships? Where are the innovative approaches? What are other cities doing across the nation? Because like you said, every city is experiencing this exact problem, but we're gonna need some pretty drastic and pretty innovative and scaled solutions really fast in this space if we're actually gonna have a shot at collectively reaching these targets. And the good news is that all the cities are in the same boat then, right? So there's got to be something that somebody's doing or that we can scale up and join together with. But I think that's the next piece that we really have to tackle after we finish after we deeply address the existing building decarb this year. To that effect, I continue to hope that the council will continue to staff the sustainability office well and long, grow and create long-term, capacity additions into the space because it's absolutely critical. This will be especially important for the implementation of the REACH code and for any implementation support of any existing building work, which, like you said, it is much more comprehensive than new construction efforts. And so I think the city needs to plan to staff this up accordingly at a different scale than what we've seen historically. And I would hope that the council would support this. And then finally, just a couple tactical things. So I'm really glad that we have actual data for 2019, but to the public comments that was discussed, I actually do think it'll be important to have actual progress data again post-pandemic. So whether that's 2023 or 2024, planning that and then budgeting for it accordingly and give it, having the proper, kind of plan for the consultants to come back pretty soon and give us an actual, hey, how we're doing post-pandemic, real assessment, I think will actually be really important because we should not be assuming a pre-pandemic world. And I'll be very curious to see how things, shook out. And I think it's important for future policy as we drive towards 2030. And the last thing is just as a tactical manner, maybe in the future when the next April or May, someone from Public Works can also be here because I am noticing a pattern of intersection between sustainability and the cap that you're responsible for and some of these questions that maybe Public Works can also help out with. So maybe we can kind of have someone and then if more questions can be answered in real time, that'll be cool. And I think that's it. Thank you as always for excellent work and really proud to help support the city.
Thank you. Thanks, staff. Reports and announcements. Staff have anything? Kathy?
Andrea, would you like to share the Earth Day lineup that you have planned?
I'd love to share about Earth Day. We kicked off our Sustainability for All series on April 1st with a Fix It clinic, which was our second clinic held at the San Mateo Main Library, where residents could bring different household items like toys even, or sweaters to be mended and repaired. So it increases the longevity of things that people already own. And we also had vegetable gardening workshops for children last weekend. But I want to highlight what's going on moving forward. On Saturday, April 22nd, we will have a local blogger named the Zero Waste Chef named Anne Marie come make soup and not waste with an induction cooktop at the main library at 10:30 on Saturday. And this day is going to be filled with events because there's also a resource fair following that morning event and 2 visible mending workshops also at the library. And then a virtual seminar, moving into May, a virtual seminar on May 2nd, discussing thriving in an age of drought and deluge. And then an Electrify Your Home and Save Money workshop on Tuesday, May 9th. And that's in person at the main library. Then we always have these annually. Our Shred and E-Scrap recycling event is May 13th at Beresford Park. And then also on that same day, we're doing a compost giveaway and a seedling giveaway at the courtyard. That's Saturday, May 13th. And closing out on Saturday, May 20th, there is a vegetable gardening seminar at the library, followed by the unveiling of our new seed library that's launching, where you can get free seeds from the library to start your own vegetable gardening. So we're very excited to launch all of these programs and hopefully inspire everyone that they can be a part of the climate movement and take any type of action. And if you guys want information about this, this is all available on our website.
Thank you very much. Any commissioner announcements, reports? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, public.